Hey, this is one of the first sculptures I ever made on this channel, and the water effects were made with some cheap silicone, but I still think it looks pretty good, so I thought I would revisit this method today. Only the subject of the sculpture is going to be Pokemon, and I don't think Pokemon really needs an introduction, so I'm going to be using the same wooden base as my other sculpture. I got this at my local craft store. I'll start by making a wire armature that will hold all the weight, and then bulk it up with some foil so I don't have to use so much clay. And I'm using a polymer clay called Cosclay. The Pokemon I'm making is Gyarados, which is a fish dragon that evolves from this useless fish because that makes total sense. I'm sectioning out his body first and then smoothing and rounding each section. I originally made everything too thick, so this took a while to fix. After that was done, I added more clay to shape its head. At the moment it just looks like a funny seahorse, but I'll add some more distinctive features and it will get better. This might be a very controversial thing to say in a Pokemon video, but I actually used to watch a lot of Digimon as a child instead of Pokemon. For some reason it was a lot more popular on TV in my country than Pokemon, so maybe I should make a Digimon sculpture someday as well. If you are a Pokemon fan, please let me know if you even know what Digimon is and if you like both franchises. The sculpting for this piece is quite simple, but the more simple a design is, the more you have to get everything perfect for it to look right. I originally made the lips too plump, so I will redo them off camera a bit thinner. And then I'll add some final details. Most of these very thin long clay details have a very thin wire in them as well to help them keep shape. When I'm done with everything, I'll draw on some shallow lines that separate the colors on the body. The water effects I'll be adding later will hide the texture anyway, but it will at least help me with the paint job. I want the Pokemon to be emerging from the water, with some of its body still not visible, so I will make the tail separately. I often bake certain pieces of the sculpture before adding them onto the rest, like this tail piece for example. It sometimes makes things easier to work with, and polymer clay can be baked multiple times. For the painting, I thought I would finally use my airbrush, so I covered the sculpture with a layer of red. Normally, Gyarados is blue, but I decided to go with the shiny version because it would stand out more in the water. I think there was something stuck in the tip of the brush though, so the color was not coming out that well. And the vibrations of the air compressor kept disconnecting my camera for some reason, so it was very hard to film this. But I didn't do anything too crazy, just a base layer and then a darker shade in all the crevices and a lighter highlight in the middle. I'm not great at airbrushing, I've only done it a few times and I didn't have any masking tape, so I decided to paint the stomach by hand. This also had the same style shadows and highlights, but took 20 layers and a lot of time instead. I think I dislike painting so much because there are always these light colors in my projects that take like 2 hours just to get a nice even color. I'm sure there is something I could do to make this easier, but sometimes you just want to be miserable. Now the last thing for his paint job is his eyes, which are a dark red, the same as his body, with a fierce look and a little bit of sparkle too. I will cover everything with a gloss varnish to truly make it a shiny Pokemon and also protect the paint. I thought it would be really cute to also add a Magikarp to the sculpture somewhere, so I will quickly make one. I've already made it once before for a different Pokemon sculpture, so it was quite easy to do it again. For some reason the Magikarp looks really tasty. I guess it reminds me of one of those cute Japanese fish cake snacks. The color isn't far off either, a dark orange with yellow details. I thought about using the airbrush for this, but for something this small, it's just not worth the hassle of cleaning the brush, so I painted it by hand. This also gets covered with gloss varnish. Now that the painting is done, we can move on to making the base and pretending that you don't see the fact that I actually made it before the painting. I will be making the waves with silicone, but to make it much easier, I will first make a wavy base shape underneath. I will do this by gluing foil to the base first and then covering it with air dry clay. I'm adding glue between the layers to help them stick together. I generally hate working with this type of clay, but it's much cheaper and I just need some kind of base layer. It doesn't actually matter what it looks like. It also ended up cracking, but once again this doesn't matter because it won't be visible. I then mixed my paints with Montage and covered the base. I tried to make it look like the sea with multiple colors and depths, but as usual, I did something to ruin it later. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I also covered the rest of the wood with black paint. I then added a layer of Montage over all the paint, so it doesn't, for some reason, bleed into the silicone. And using 2-part epoxy glue, I glued in the sculpture. For my old sculpture, I used clear silicone. The only thing I could find this time was a translucent silicone. For some reason I thought it would be just as clear. So I mixed it with isopropyl alcohol to thin it a bit and added some blue pigment. I then added it all over the waves as a first base layer. To no one's surprise, it did not dry clear and the whole paint job is now just kind of the same blue. I then bought the next best thing I could find, which is some clear Montage glue. I wasn't sure if this would even work, but it kind of does. It doesn't hold shape as well and needed a lot more layers than silicone, but at least it was clear. So I kept adding more, poking it around a bit, waiting for it to dry, and then doing it again and again. When I had built up the waves, I went over the edges with white silicone to mimic water foam. I wasn't sure if this would turn out okay while I was working with these odd materials, but it turned out much better than I expected. With the help of my patrons, I decided to add Magikarp on the tail and kind of being picked up and flicked out of the water. And then added more of the watered down Montage glue all over the sculpture as water drips. Since this is glue and not silicone, it ended up reacting weird with the alcohol and leaving some spots on the sculpture very matte and odd looking. I then went over those with UV resin to fix it and also used the resin to make a few bigger water drips. And that's it. A big thank you to my newest patron, Gina Lipkin, as well as all these wonderful people. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!